We never pass up the opportunity for real food and, of course, treats when we're on the trail. It's week 15 on the Appalachian Trail, and we are still technically in Harpers Ferry, but we're staying at the Cross Trails Hostel, which is right over the line in Maryland. Last week, we finished the week with a bang by making it to Harpers Ferry and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. But today, I was getting to walk down memory lane and enjoy a 0 day in Harpers Ferry. So we were soaking in all the history.
One of the most stupendous scenes in nature. You stand on a very high point of land. On your right comes up the Shenandoah. I'm reversed. On your right comes up the Shenandoah, having ranged along the foot of the mountain and 100 miles to seek a vent. On your left approaches the Potomac, in quest of a passage also. In the moment of their junction, they rush together against the mountain, rend it asunder, and pass off to the sea. He went on to say, this scene is worth a voyage across the Atlantic.
We enjoyed some historical presentations from the rangers, and then we also enjoyed some of the shops that were right downtown near the park, like this historical candy shop. We also wandered through all my favorite little exhibits and displays from when I was working in the park. And it was so much fun to reminisce and think about how 4 years ago when I was here, I was just dreaming of being a thru hiker. And now I was here and I was visiting Harpers Ferry as a thru hiker. And yeah, it was just so exciting to look back on this spot and think of how many times I dreamed of following the white blazes from this exact spot. And now I was actually doing that. But whether you're thru hiking or you're just very into history, I highly recommend a visit to Harpers Ferry National Historical Park. There is so much here to learn and so much history that has occurred. I'm not necessarily the biggest history person. However, I think it's so important just to learn and enjoy these things. Plus, we're so close to DC, it's so easy to add on to a trip from DC to see all the history that this area has to offer. We didn't really have anything particular in mind when we were wandering up around Harpers Ferry. I just wanted to be there and to just enjoy this little place that I used to live. Especially because the next day we were headed into DC for the day because Barbie had never been to DC. So today we were making the most of Harpers Ferry and enjoying every second and enjoying the quiet little streets of Harpers Ferry because Monday was a lot calmer than it was on Sunday. Absolutely love being back at Harpers Ferry. It's been so much fun to explore the historical park again and all the little shops that line the main street. It's definitely a cool spot if you've never been. And you get to check out the ATC, which as a thru hiker is totally a perk to being here. Also, if you've never been to Harpers Ferry, if you do choose to go, I highly recommend walking across this bridge, which takes you from Harpers Ferry over into the C&O Canal. It's also a really cool trail, and it's mostly flat gravel. Hiker trash walking in the street so that we don't have to walk up a janky-ass hill. Walking to the train station. Like a couple of acorns. It was like 4 something in the morning and we were walking to the train station in Harpers Ferry to catch a train from Harpers Ferry into DC for the day. And lucky us, when we got to the train station, we ran into some of our favorite hiker trash, the BFs. It was always so good to see them, and being with them while we waited for the train made the time pass quicker. And before we knew it, the train into DC was chugging along the tracks to come pick us up. Even though I lived in Harpers Ferry for 4 months, I had never taken the train from Harpers Ferry to DC. I think it's because it's actually a lot easier to take the train on the weekdays because there's so many commuters using it, and my days off were on the weekends. But either way, since we were going during the week, it was super easy to grab the train and head to Union Station. The BFs had their own plan for being in DC, so myself, Barbie, and Shooter, who we shortened his name to Shoo Shoo for the day, for obvious reasons, and we went wandering around to all of the iconic spots and all the iconic monuments that you basically have to see when you're in DC. There was a time way before I was a thru hiker where I thought one day I'd want to live in DC. And although I still regard it as one of my favorite bigger cities, I don't think I ever actually see myself living here. It's just too big for me now. This is what happens when you bring your boyfriend who loves his Merlin bird ID app to the big city. He tries to ID and follow around the ducks. Then it was time to go see one of the most iconic and one of my favorite monuments in DC, the Lincoln Memorial. There's just something so powerful about this one. We then took a break from all the monuments to go to the Hirshhorn Museum of Modern Art. Barbie absolutely loves art, and so I thought it would be a little bit fun and a little bit different to go to this place that I had also never been before and see some absolutely phenomenal and unique modern art. From the moment we walked in, I was blown away by how awesome the art looked, and I had luckily seen before we got there that the Yayoi Kusama exhibit was going to be there, and I had booked us a special ticket to make sure that we got to see these exhibits. They were absolutely phenomenal and unique and breathtaking, and they were one of my favorite things that we saw in DC and at the art museum. I was just blown away by the use of dots and the use of color. And then it was time for a little matcha treat in the cafe of the museum before we headed back to a different floor to explore more exhibits. This exhibit was to represent all of the trash that we have around the world, and I thought it was really moving and powerful to see in this visual way. This was another one of my favorite exhibits from the day, and I just loved that the entirety of this room was a piece of artwork, and you had to look everywhere to absorb it, and even then you could miss something because there was just so much to see. I loved so much of the artwork in the Hirshhorn, and I was so glad we decided to add this to our itinerary. We couldn't decide where to eat for lunch, so we ended up going to a food hall where we got this, and it was kind of mediocre, but food that wasn't dehydrated was delicious. Then we made our way to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, because how could we not go to this iconic spot in DC for Barbie and Shooter's first trip? This spot was super crowded, as expected, but when you're coming off the trail, the crowds are a little bit overwhelming. However, we made the best of it, and we enjoyed wandering around and seeing all the exhibits and all the displays and learning about new animals that we didn't even know existed. And then once the crowds got a little too overwhelming for me, I kind of just people watched, and it was kind of fun to stand up higher and look at the displays, but also just watch people, not in a creepy way. And then one of our last adventures before heading back was we had to go see the Washington Monument. We then headed back towards where we began, but first a little video from earlier that I realized was out of order. If you also love Captain America, then you know this reference. When we got back to Harpers Ferry, I realized that I hadn't gotten a picture by myself in front of the sign on my phone, and so Barbie walked back down with me so that we could get a picture on my phone. When we got back to the hostel, I had to do fun repair on my trekking pole. I don't recommend these trekking poles. They're very lightweight, but they're not necessarily the best well-made trekking poles. I think you can get at least the same quality, maybe not the same lightness, for a much cheaper price. Anyways, I fixed them, and the next morning we hopped back on the trail where we followed the C&O Canal for a few miles. Just look at how lovely and green that water is. Yum. We are finally, we had a good time. We are finally leaving Harpers Ferry today. We had a zero in Harpers Ferry, which is really great. We got to check out the historical park. And then yesterday we went to DC. It was Shooter and Barbie's first time there. And so that was really cool for them to get to see that. So we went to see the monuments and to some of the museums. We took the train from Harpers Ferry, and there was some video of that previously of all the fun things that we did. And that was awesome. But today we left Cross Trails, which is an awesome little hostel right across the river in Maryland from Harpers Ferry, and we just left there this morning. It was hard to leave. It's kind of sprinkling, you can't really tell, but it's always hard to leave. But there is a creamery in 15 miles that has ice cream and milkshakes and delicious milk, so that is what is motivating me today. But it's always good to be back on the trail, and yeah, it's gonna be hopefully a good day and not so rainy. So halfway mark, here we come. After the trail veered off from the C&O Canal, we reached Weaverton Cliffs. Weaverton Cliffs? This was one of the spots that I had hiked to when I interned in Harpers Ferry, and then we made it to Gathland State Park, which is also a spot that I hiked to. This was the last spot on trail that I had been to before. I didn't take much video the rest of the day because it rained all day, but we sprinted here.
We made it. I trucked it here, but we made it with like 20 minutes to spare. We got chocolate milk. Barbie got a milkshake with a strawberry milk and some delicious ice cream. What flavor? I don't remember what flavor that was. Smelly Gaster. Yeah. And then I got a cookie butter ice cream. So good.
With the amount of mileage we had, Barbie did not think that we were going to make it to South Mountain Creamery, and especially because it was a mile off trail. But I was so motivated, so we made it and we got delicious ice cream, one of my favorite treats of the trail.
The original Washington Monument. I didn't know that there were two. Let's go up.
This Washington Monument was built over 20 years before the one on the National Mall was built, and this was the first monument built in the United States to recognize George Washington. So of course, when we passed this unique piece of history while wandering down the trail, we had to climb up to the top.
This is a beautiful view from the Washington Monument.
Breathtaking, right?
Absolutely beautiful. Especially that I keep standing in puddles.
It's fascinating and a bit wild to me that we're also familiar with the other Washington Monument, and yet this first one, this original Washington Monument, so few of us know about. Or maybe it's just me, but I definitely don't think I learned about this one in my history books in school.
Hiker trash lunch on a mountain. Annapolis Rock. The fog cleared up just enough for us to have a bit of a view.
As we were getting to Annapolis Rock, we ran into a group of kids who were at summer camp, and they were climbing up Annapolis Rock, which we thought was really cool because climbing up this rock was a whole nother ball game. And after a really foggy and rainy morning, I was so excited to have a little bit of a view from this iconic spot. Comparatively, Maryland was a relatively short state, but I was really enjoying it so far.
We're not even in Pennsylvania yet, but there's rocks and more rocks. They're pretty, but I don't like them. And we are officially out of the South. Made it to the Mason-Dixon line. Time for Pennsylvania and Rocksylvania and destroying our feet. Woo! 6 states done.
9 states done.
And Barbie is a doofus. Still a doofus after 6 states. We made it to the Mason-Dixon line. 6 states down. Now just to conquer the rocks of Pennsylvania. We'll see if they are as bad as everybody says, but my feet are not looking forward to it. But we'll see how it goes.
It was so exciting to cross yet another state line and to even so cross the Mason-Dixon line, which meant that we were officially entering the north.
It is day three of being drenched in rain. I actually don't really mind hiking in the rain, but after 3 days of like nothing being completely dry, including my socks, I'm done with the rain. So whoever's in control of the weather, could I request some sunshine, please? Just for a day to dry out my stuff so that I don't feel like a wet, soggy human being. But anyways, we did cross the Mason-Dixon line today and went into a new state. So that means 6 states down and a bunch more to go. But you know, since we crossed the Mason-Dixon line, that means it's still a good day and I'm still gonna make the best of it. We apparently get some trail magic up ahead, so that always makes a rainy day better. And yeah, yesterday was also rainy. We did 18 miles, which is not our longest day. Oops, sorry, stomping through a big puddle. Which is not our longest day, but it was a tough day for me. It's Shark Week, which makes me extra tired, and then I've been having some issues with my feet, and just by the end of the day, because it's been rainy, I was just tired and I was done. So cried a little bit the last half mile of the day. But you know, even the bad days out here, I still get to be out here. And I try to remind myself of that. So even if they're bad or tiring, it happens. Not every day out here is going to be good. So hopefully the sunshine will come out soon and we get trail magic hopefully in a little while. So here's to Pennsylvania and Rocksylvania, and we'll see how those rocks treat my feet. Also, I don't know if I just stomp more than other people, but this is what the rain does to my legs. It's only noon. So by the end of the day, who knows what these bad boys will look like.
The start of Pennsylvania wasn't super rocky, but it was very wet, very rainy, and full of mud. But despite the weather, I was super excited to be in this new state and to be one more state down from getting to Maine. Although I was super excited to be in a new state, I was also feeling super tired. So there were a few days that we stopped a little bit early and just hung out in the shelter. I always felt like I was somewhat wasting my days when I did this, but at the same time, if my body was that tired, then I knew it needed that little bit of rest. But after a little extra rest, I was always ready to go the next morning, and it reaped the rewards because we found this amazing barbecue spot in Pennsylvania. And I only say it like that because I'm from North Carolina.
Y'all, this barbecue only a half mile off trail and it was delicious. It was so good. So good. And we missed the rain by stopping here. So now we're headed back to trail along the road. Most difficult. Always the AT. Here we go. The shelters in Maryland and Pennsylvania have been the absolute prettiest ones we've seen on trail. Let me show you.
Life is good. Look, see, she has that shirt on I want.
I love it.
What do you love the best about it?
That it's a fun pattern.
And how is it like?
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're halfway there. Whoa, on the Appalachian Trail. We're halfway there. Pine Grove Furnace, here we come. We're halfway. Woo! 1,100 miles.
This sign was apparently pretty iconic. I don't know why. It was very cool looking though. After we passed the halfway marker on the trail and then we got to Pine Grove Furnace, I was so excited to have made it halfway, but it also felt unreal. I still could not fathom how my body had carried me this far, but I was so grateful. After you reach the halfway mark and get to Pine Grove Furnace, you also get to do, if you want to, the half-gallon challenge, which is where you eat a half-gallon of ice cream as quick as you can. I opted out of this because I did not want to poop my pants again, and B, that just sounded like giving myself a lactose intolerance problem. So I opted out of that, and we instead just enjoyed a delicious burger and some french fries, and then we went to go check out the Appalachian Trail Museum. The museum is honestly really cool, and if you're interested in history of the Appalachian Trail, it has a lot of fun gems. And I also learned that they actually keep the shelter logs from every year. So it'll be fun in a few years to potentially go back and find my old shelter log notes. This display was like a visual display of the trail with facts about each state, and it was really fun to just walk through this and just experience what other people get to learn about the Appalachian Trail. And even though I did not do the half-gallon challenge, I did have to celebrate making it halfway with a little treat, of course.